answer another question as we start our discussion on lithium-ion batteries, there are factors that need consistent consideration by all. What are the elemental factors that drive client adoption of lithium-ion battery-powered vehicles? For fortunate growth of electric vehicles and development of energy storage systems, the key elemental factors are 1. Cost, 2. Charging station, 3. Fossil fuel, 4. Range, 5. Belief in electric vehicle technology, 6. Sustainability, 7. Social reinforcement, 8. Availability, 9. Experience, 10. Negative perception. Now let's see all 10 elemental factors in detail. Cost. There are people who believe that in a decade or so, electric vehicles can price the maximum amount as an IC engine vehicle. Proposals about future cost, intensity of EVs contrasted with ICEs are made by analysts. Scope of batteries for EVs has inflated enormously. Company seems to get closer and closer to the very competitive $35,000 range price tag. Manufacturing the costliest part of the car, battery as such can powerfully contributes them to achieve even a lot of economies. Tesla is one such company. Cost is a crucial issue when selecting an EV. Companies that forthright price tag is a main factor in deciding vehicle acceptance. Reducing the cost of batteries we make an incredible advancement, yet there is still a lot of work to be done to form lithium-ion based battery solutions reasonable enough to change high-volume applications. Competing technologies are significant reason for the expenses of lithium-ion to keep on dropping. Charging station. Without a charging station you can't charge your battery. Public charging stations are significant to all EV owners. They additionally offer charging opportunities for those that don't have a chance to put in a charging station at home. They improve the range certainty for EV drivers. Particularly in the city this is predominant due to space limits. There are many obstacles for public charging stations, for example, administrative vulnerability, regulative uncertainty, an absence of normalization and above all else significantly expensive. This is the place there's crucial role for the government who may be a party that may invest in EV infrastructure, even once the business case isn't however positive. On the off chance that there are abundant charging stations, EV reception rates will increase. If there are not any charging stations, there'll be no rise in EVs. Fossil fuel. One may argue that the globe slowly however for certain heading towards complete depletion of fossil fuel resources. This suggests that countries and folks are terribly captivated with oil. Throughout the years there have been many oil emergencies, indicating how insecure the business is. Costs and convenience of oil are noticeably influenced by politics. Once driving an EV, one reduces risks of being a victim of abrupt rising oil costs. Dependency on politics and markets is reduced. This fashion of thinking may push people towards buying an EV. Range. Restricted range could be a barrier for EV adoption. Range anxiety is outlined as the concern of totally depleting a BEV's battery within the middle of a trip, leaving the driver stranded. The range could be a continuous drawback, as perception of range remains a good barrier for acceptance even with skilled EV drivers. Range to be one amongst the most considerations of consumers. When drivers are inexperienced, unsure concerning the trip length or energy consumption for heating or cooling the automotive, it's hard for them to guess how long their battery can last. Increasing the battery size and therefore the potentialities for recharging whereas on the road are examples of this. Even with additional electrified versions of current vehicles out there, there's still a region of client concern about electric range, what the vehicles can do. Belief in EV technology. According to a study, EVs as the future of transportation. They are referred to as it, the way of the future, and future of travel. Folks typically are excited to find out new technologies. These were found to be positive associations. Perhaps one of the areas that neither the trade nor the governments have done a really sensible job around is in educating the buyer on the differences, similarities, benefits, and challenges of electrified vehicles. Customers still consider any level of electrification to be high technology instead of mass market ready. Sustainability. One of the fundamental motivations to pick an EV over an IC engine is the fact that EVs produce zero emission. The natural mentalities of customers impact the aim to purchase alternative fuel vehicles. When driving an EV, members feel a great vibe factor because they are aware of the environmental advantages of the EV. Social reinforcement. Purchasing choices are influenced by social externalities, for example, peer pressure, social impacts and accepted practices. Social influence on behavior is an prestigious issue that affects selection. An individual is influenced by others as a result of having used a technology. A study looking at client buying behavior for hybrid vehicles found that the neighbor impact was in play. It appears to be the case that once you have several EV drivers in your neighborhood or social circle, you're additional seeming to think about getting an EV yourself. Availability. There are a lot of new electrified vehicle applications on the market to the buyer per annum. However, when we check out the more highly electrified plug-in hybrid electrical vehicle and electric vehicles, there are still a comparatively restricted quantity of product on the market to the buyer. Experience. The impact on the acceptance of EVs has been studied. Results were a mix. Participants were skeptical about whether or not EVs are appropriate for daily use, so they were considering an EV as a second automotive. Most participants mentioned they felt smart regarding the environmental advantages. After leasing EVs for 1 year, drivers have higher opinions as well as increased intentions to buy an EV. Experience has a positive influence on acceptance. Finally, perception of EVs has advantages and barriers can considerably change when experience is gained. This impact are often in positive as well as negative in directions. Finally, found that folks with experience showed lower considerations for range and charging issues. This might probably increase electric vehicles adoption. Negative perception. Drivers felt that electric vehicles were substandard to IC engine cars. They expressed that the automotive felt underpowered. Customers preferred more horsepower when making purchase selections. A study on hybrid cars found comfort to be one of the most important factors to influence consumer adoption. One of the most significant explanations behind EV's low seriousness and request is their high cost. It might be fascinating to seek out how the buyer is perceiving electric vehicles and if this perception influences electric vehicles adoption. These are, as I would think, the elemental key problems that require to be resolved so as to make sure that electrification technology can get deeply integrated into transportation. Some of these, corresponding to price, are hurdles that may be achieved through inflated volumes just as of progressions in technology. In any case, cost and volume are legitimately connected to customer. Having a charging infrastructure that matches customers' request. Besides having the next variety of accessible electrified applications. However, today most electrically based vehicles are still supported architectures that were designed for combustion engines. In fact, in most of those vehicles, there's no customary location for a battery. That is why we tend to see such a big amount of completely different installation locations among different vehicles. Today, with solely minor exceptions, most electrically power-driven vehicles package their batteries below the seats, within the trunk, or within the transmission tunnel, in essence, making an attempt to suit the square peg of a battery into the spherical hole of the present vehicle design. Future vehicles are going to be designed with the battery together of the planning criteria. Therefore, it'll be an integral part of the vehicle design instead of being added as an afterthought. Last but not least, everything is into the customers. They look for best options. India is still emerging and there is a long way to go. We will continue to discuss more of EV developments around and we conclude today's video. Any questions, leave it in the comments section below. We will answer with our best. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and share it with all your friends. Thank you so much everyone, for watching. Thank you so much for joining us.